Okay, hello. My name is Tyra Corey Skill, and I will be interviewing Margaret Russett, who is an English professor at USC. Margaret,
Yes.
how is your subject matter related to my career interest of becoming an English professor?
How is my subject matter related to your career interest?
Yes.
I'm a professor of English, and you suggested that you might want to be a professor of English.
Yes.
I'm not sure what kind of bearing otherwise you had in mind. Can you rephrase the question?
Well, like, if I'm becoming an English professor and I'm just starting, and I don't know, like, what to do and how to complete it, or how to teach the English subject matter? Is it on still like a senior college level, or is it on like a high school level?
The kind of teaching I do,
Yes.
or the kind of training that you need to get.
Okay.
I'll answer both questions. I teach college and graduate students from freshmen to PhD students. So all of it's post secondary, and the youngest students I teach are college freshmen. The more advanced students I teach are getting their doctorates, which means that they have already um, finished their BA degrees, their college degrees, and are taking classwork toward a master's degree, and then they write book length dissertations in order to achieve their doctorates. So I, in addition to teaching classes at different levels, I also supervise and advise the writing of doctoral dissertations. That is to say, the independent research, the books that these advanced students write. Um, and achieving a PhD, which basically means having written a book length and book quality piece of research and writing, um, is the basic qualification for becoming a professor, a college or university professor oneself.
Okay. May I ask another question that is separate from my interview questions, but how long does it take for you to teach someone who's getting a PhD in your class?
Well, as I say, a PhD is sort of beyond classwork. That a person who is trying to get a PhD, of course, obviously starts by graduating from college, and then will sometimes go to get a master's degree, which basically involves more advanced classes and sometimes writing a short thesis. And after the master's is completed, or else during the process of doing PhD work, then the person who wants to get a PhD embarks on an independent research project, and that can take several years by itself. We hope and we expect that it doesn't take too many years, but on average, probably um, in addition to the 4 years of college, getting a PhD and master's degree usually takes 5 years and sometimes more.
Okay. So, next question. What makes your class unique in comparison to other classes in Los Angeles? So, it could be other universities or colleges. What makes it stand out?
Uh, well, um, do you have in mind what makes taking an English class different, or what makes me in particular, my class in particular?
Yeah, you in particular.
Well, I would like to think that the kinds of subjects I teach are special. I teach romantic poetry, which is uh, an exceptionally beautiful and complex and challenging body of work that I think tends to inspire people and to bring out their own sort of highest ideals and hopes and ambitions. I also like to think that my classes are very interactive, that I'm much more about helping other people to think their best thoughts than I am about sort of making them think my thoughts. And so I like to think that these classes are much more creative and interactive than they are just about the transferring or processing of information.
Yes. Okay. Next question. How do you implement character education into your class?
Character education, you mean?
Like the 6 pillars of character, responsibility,
Well,
fairness.
I don't think that teaching character is my direct responsibility, no, but I do think that teaching literature is one of the best ways to learn how to examine all sides of a moral or ethical issue. It's a great way to develop empathy because reading literature compels one to imagine oneself into a different life, imagine oneself into other people's worlds and other people's lives. So I think if we think of a character as having to do with empathy and the development of ethical principles, then literature is a great way to learn those things.
Next question. What are your thoughts on team teaching?
Well, I don't do very much of it. Most of my classes have been single taught. But sometimes I think in the right context and for the right reasons, team teaching can be a great way of modeling interaction, can be a great way of modeling dialogue, that any complex and interesting issue can be come at from several different points of view, that people can disagree with one another and yet each be both intelligent and persuasive, that complex questions have more than one answer.
Okay. How can you help me make it to a higher level in my dream of becoming an English professor?
Well, I can give you an idea about what's involved.
And may I get like a sneak peek on what's involved?
Yeah. Well, first of all, you're going to have to graduate from high school with a strong enough record that you are able to get into a good college. And one would hope that in that time you're discovering the kinds of things that you're really best at doing and thinking about. In college, if you want to be an English professor, you're probably going to want to major in English, but you might also want to consider doing a double major or a minor in another related field, because teaching literature really involves knowing a lot about a lot of different things. Literature, of course, is a reflection of life, and so it relates to psychology, it relates to history, it relates to philosophy, it relates to visual art and the other arts. So I think developing as broad an education as you can in college is also very important. I would, consider doing a double major or minor in one of those fields that I mentioned, maybe a foreign language, and then from college or university, you will need to apply either directly to a PhD program or to a master's program. And to do that successfully, you will need to be able to show not only that you were a good student in college, but that you have the ability to think in original and exciting ways, and that you have something important to give, both as a scholar and as a teacher of other people. So you'll need to pay careful attention to your application when that time comes, and then you'll have to be willing to commit, 5 years or maybe more to being in graduate school, which usually means being relatively poor for a period of time, and working very hard for a period of time, which not everyone wants to be working hard in. That's usually your 20s. And being able to keep your eye focused on that goal. It's impressive and exciting that you're thinking about this already so young, so early on in your education, and that means that you have the opportunity to plan all your further study with that goal in mind.
Okay, last question. What does the level and quality of student interaction mean to you?
What does the level and quality of student interaction mean?
Yeah.
Do you mean, do I think it's important, or
Yeah.
how do I make it happen?
Yes, both, please.
Well, I hope what I've just said already about my own teaching makes it clear that the level and quality of student interaction is the whole story as far as I'm concerned. That my teaching is not about me. Yes, it's about my subject. It's about the writers that I'm teaching and the works that I'm teaching. But those writers and those works are themselves important because of the effect that they have on other people and because of the thoughts and the dreams that they enable other people to have and to think. So student interaction, and stimulating students ideas and thoughts and ability to express them is the whole goal of my teaching, really. So I see myself, in a sense, as a facilitator of a dialogue between writers and between readers, because reading is always a form of communication. It's a way for different people from different periods of time, different parts of the world, to talk with one another, to converse with one another, and reading is always a creative act, and writing is always an intellectual act. So, even though we think of, writing as the creative part and reading the interpretive part, really I think that they're always both things at the same time.
Okay. Well, thank you, Margaret Russett. That was very helpful for me, and now I know that with the information that you gave me, I am on a more ready and steady journey of becoming an English professor. And I thank you for your time today.
May I ask you in my turn, what makes you want to become an English professor?
Well, when I was a little girl, I always looked up to my teacher, and every time it was English time, no one liked it, and I really loved it. Mm-hmm. And as I grew up, I started teaching my younger sister when she was 3 years old. I taught her, all this English stuff. I would teach her ABCs, how to write her name, just the basic English things that you learn in elementary. And as I progressed in middle school, I would help my teachers with English. Sometimes they would let me teach other classes. Mm-hmm. And now in high school, I'm helping my English teacher right now, with essays and Romeo and Juliet and all that.
Well, that's great. Well, why an English professor, like a college teacher, rather than a high school teacher, say?
Well, I thought about it, and I thought that I should start off as a high school English teacher and then work my way up to an English professor, because I like a little bit of a challenge. And I think that working with different classes and helping people with PhDs and all that will help me become greater at what I do. Mm-hmm. And since it's my passion, I'm going to stay focused on this.
Well, that makes sense. You could, one thing you might think about when you get to college is enrolling with a program called Teach for America, which enables students with BA degrees to go out and teach in public schools for several years without necessarily getting a degree in education. And so they are, they make a commitment for 2 years or so, but not necessarily for the rest of their lives. And that can give them, just a great experience that they'll use in whatever walk of life they end up being in, not necessarily that of, teaching or academia at all.
Well, thank you.
So, well, good luck to you, Tyra.
Thank you so much, Margaret.
It's a pleasure.
Okay, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.